AEW Worlds in 2024, the last AEW pay-per-view of the year is behind us. And I know I'm a little late putting out my thoughts about the event, but this is a little bit of the year-end AEW talk. And then also I'm going to mix in some thoughts on the pay-per-view as well. I never question whether or not AEW can put on a pay-per-view. They do a great job with it. It's almost as if when you go to, and I mean this with all due respect, this isn't a slight here. Oh, by the way, I'm the Wrestling Old Head. You have entered the portal of pro wrestling, and I'm about to break down AEW like a shotgun. So let's talk about it. Their ability to put on pay-per-views, I never questioned it. They always do a great job, and it's very similar to when you go to an independent wrestling show. You know, they've got from top to bottom, it looks like, great matches, you know, and you're getting an opportunity to see some future professional wrestlers that, you know, hit the big time, and then you're seeing some wrestlers from the past, some legends, if you will, gracing the independent scene with their presence, you know, and there's some companies that do a really good job at that. There are some that you would call a little bit above, like the independent scene. Like for me, I would put MLW, Deadlock Pro. I would put some of those companies like that above a normal independent company because they do television, you know, when they can and everything. The point is, when you look at those lineups, I think of the same thing when I think of AEW. Great lineup. The matches, there's going to be some show stealers. There's going to be some great action. AEW's always been good at that. And I think it's because Tony Khan has been a fan of independent wrestling, just like he's been a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling. He went to the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows. He knows how those shows stack up. And if you don't believe me, go back and look about 12, 13 years ago when PWG was doing shows in Reseda, and they had basically 90% of the roster of main event talent that you see across TNA, AEW, or WWE. They had them all. Kevin Steen, Sami Zayn, he was known by El Generico at that time, AJ Styles, Roderick Strong, Pac, the Young Bucks, Ricochet. I mean, there was a slew of wrestlers that you see, primetime wrestlers that are in the main event today that were part of that show. They had them all. So AEW does a very similar thing where when it comes to their big events, I mean, you can't really say, depending on what kind of a fan you are, you know, you can't really say that it's a bad lineup, at least on paper. The question is how they execute. And I thought for their World's End event that they're trying to get back into that mode of not just like match after match after match. They're trying to establish themselves by giving you a chance to check in with the commentary desk, by going backstage and hearing the wrestlers post and pre-match comments, which I think is huge. Because what you want to do is you want to give the fans a chance to feel excited about the matches to come and the matches that just happened. You want to see where the storylines, where the layout for the feuds are going to go after that. And so you want to keep them hot and keep building them. So having Renee Paquette backstage doing these post-match interviews with a bloody Will Ospreay, I thought was a nice touch. And I think they should consider continuing to do that, as well as checking in with the commentary table. So you got Jim Ross there with Excalibur and Tony Schiavone. That was a great shot. That's a legendary shot there because you're getting a chance to hear what the commentators have to say, and also you're getting a chance to let the moment breathe. Once the match is over, it gets a chance to breathe. And that's always important, you know, because you don't want to blow the crowd and tire them out, you know, for a 4-hour event by having them like cheer, cheer, cheer. By the time that's over, they're going to be like out of breath by the time the main event gets there and waiting to get home. You know, they're going to be tired. So you don't want to tire them out. Not every crowd is like France, you know, for Backlash or whatever in the WWE, right? But going back to the World's End pay-per-view, I think they did an excellent job of building the card, right? So from the opening match to the main event, I thought they did a good job with their build. Execution could leave a lot to be desired. MJF and Adam Cole, that feud, that thing it's tired, man. It was cold, and it's really hard to restart that feud. And I understand that they had something going there, and then injuries and everything happened, so they had to put a pause on it and shift to something else, but they wanted to continue it because they thought what they had right there was actually going to be really good. So let's keep this thing going. And I understand where that mindset is, but at the same time, going and turning them back to their original factory reset alignment, you know, their face heel alignments, it just did not work out. Adam Cole is not going to be cheered because he's got four dudes that he's cool with that are back on his side that were normally booed like most of the year. And MJF, as much as he wants to try to use expletives and, cuss out at the crowd, they're going to appreciate him for his athletical prowess and for his charisma. And they like him. They like him because he's hated. And it's a weird thing that the crowd has with him, a weird relationship. And they're just not buying Adam Cole as a face anymore. It's like it's too late. You can't go back and turn the clock back and pretend like all that other stuff never happened, as much as they would like to, as much as they probably tried to. So for the best part of them, they need to move on and hopefully move Adam Cole into something where he doesn't have four henchmen like he's a heel by his side, and he can move on and do something a little bit better. I would hope after a while they realize that and move MJF to something else, move Adam Cole move them far away from each other, and try and get Adam Cole back in the good graces of the fans. But I mean, I don't know any stables, like 5-man stables that are faces that don't have opponents that are out there. I mean, they can go after the Death Riders, but the Death Riders seemingly are a little busy right now. They're too busy battling the other side of the world in AEW. Adam Copeland, I called it. If you go back and watch some of my videos where I talked about where they need to go with this, Adam Copeland showing up and being the guy that talks and riles the AEW roster up to go against the Death Riders is something that I saw coming from a mile away. Not to say that I wasn't shocked when it did happen, because I was. FT Rated R or whatever they're going to be called, or Rated FTR or whatever. I think it's a great idea. The reason why is because the AEW roster is really scarce for top level baby faces right now. And so much so that they're trying to endear the fans to some of these guys that we have grown to hate, a la Jay White, Hangman Adam Page. As much as they would like for us to love the damage and the emotionally fucked up Adam Page, he's done a lot of things that can cause them fans to be a little indifferent about whether or not to cheer for him. The same with Jay White. Jay White without the guns, without Juice Robinson, to me just screams a heel. I don't care how many times they try to get you to believe that he's Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever. He is still oozes the charisma of an arrogant heel. And then you have Orange Cassidy, which, for better or worse, he's probably the most beloved guy that was going against Jon Moxley thus far. But still, the fans aren't going to buy him winning the championship. And if you've ever seen Jon Moxley recently, Jon Moxley has put on a lot of weight. He towers over Orange Cassidy. There's no way that the fans are going to believe that Orange Cassidy is going to beat somebody as big as Jon Moxley right now. Jon Moxley is really starting to look like the brother of Claudio Castagnoli. I don't know if they've been training together or what, but Jon Moxley in a lot of ways is starting to even look like Claudio. It's kind of creepy. It's kind of weird. As far as the Death Rider story goes, I don't know what to say. I don't know if the fans aren't really buying it. I don't know what's going on with it, but it's not translating. It's like the fans are sitting around going like, what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? And nothing's coming out of it. I even said in previous videos where I was wondering if they were actually going to pull the trigger on Shane McMahon while everybody is at a lull and not expecting it to happen, and really shock the crowd, shock the world by putting Shane McMahon in a situation where he's actually running the Death Riders. I think that would be an interesting story to go on. But as it stands right now, we have not seen the AEW World Championship. It's sitting in a briefcase. We have no idea why. Even the commentators are left puzzled by what the actual motivation of the Death Riders is. And so they're just left to kind of put the pieces together. And it's fine to shroud a storyline in mystery for a while, but if you have no idea what the wrestlers' motivations are, what to look forward to, what's on the horizon, then you're left just kind of going, well, I just don't care anymore, And as much as I like the wrestlers involved, I think that they're doing great with Marina Shafir, the wife of Roderick Strong, which they could really play into that later on, like why Marina is aligned with the Death Riders and not aligned with Roderick Strong. That's sitting right there that they could play with that. They can also play with the fact that Hangman Adam Page used to be a teacher. I don't know why they're not going at that. I mean, look at, you're a bad influence for the kids. I think that's a storyline that they can attack. The Death Riders could attack that. I think Jon Moxley is very confident and very assured that there's nobody that can get in his way, and yet he also gets really, really riled up as if he's trying to convince us. I think that a laid-back Jon Moxley is a good Jon Moxley to have, because then it's like, oh, he's super confident. He's not even worried. That actually makes him more intimidating. And I think when he gets riled up and frustrated, that should be when he feels like his title is in jeopardy. Those balances there, I think, are really important and should be focused on more. Jon Moxley backstage, he can scream like the best of them. He can cut great promos. Sometimes he gets so riled up that he forgets to tie everything back together and complete his sentences or complete his paragraphs, complete the point. And I think if you had a mixture of Jon Moxley being like, this is what's got to be done, and I'm kind of nonchalant about it, and then getting riled up and frustrated, I think that would bring more interest into the Death Riders as well, because now you know that he's got a mission, and anybody that's trying to get in his way is going to get steamrolled, and those that are getting close to thwarting his mission, that's when he starts losing his cool. Those are just little nuances for character development that I'm observing that I think would help to further the story. As it stands, I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know what the point is. The only thing that I can see on the horizon is that at some point you're going to get Sting involved. Jon Moxley's going to do something to Sting, maybe the chair across the neck, or threaten to put the chair across the neck, which will get Darby Allin involved, which will then lead to Darby Allin and Jon Moxley, in which Darby Allin will finally beat Jon Moxley. But now that we see Adam Copeland return with the FTR, and they're already kind of going for the 6-man tag match on Dynamite coming up in the new year, and I don't know if they're going to use the Trios Championship and put that on the line or not. It hasn't been on the line in a long time. I mean, we didn't even see the tag titles on the line on a pay-per-view, which is very similar to what the WWE did all year, which I'm not a fan of that at all. I think you need to, if you notice a weakness, and I don't know if Tony Khan is even paying attention to what goes on in the WWE, but if he is noticing that the WWE isn't capitalizing on a division, that's when you capitalize on the division. The tag team titles should be on the line on every one of their pay-per-views, and they should use that and say, like, look, you guys can see great tag team wrestling over here. The other guys, they don't even put on tag team wrestling. I mean, it's right there in front of them. Capitalize on that stuff, because that's how you differentiate from the competition. You give the fans what they want that the other company is not giving them. I think those are things like that. But so I don't know if they're going to do the whole 6-man trios championship match with those guys, but I was looking at Adam Cole come back, and then you got the elephant in the room with Christian Cage that has that cash in for the world championship, and I go, well, that would be interesting. So you got two scenarios here. Obviously all roads are currently leading to Adam Copeland against Jon Moxley. Then you also have Christian Cage there with his cash in that he can do. You can cash in at any moment. So you can go the route of having Christian Cage insert himself into the match and make it a triple threat match, a 3-way dance. You can also have Christian Cage cost Adam Copeland the match and then cash in, or you can have Adam Copeland win, which adding Adam Copeland to your lineage, the world championship lineage, to the roster of great world champions that AEW has had, is not necessarily a bad thing. How many more opportunities are you going to get to give Adam Copeland a shot and actually give him a run as the AEW world champion? That's got to be considered. You got to consider that. Yeah, I mean, you look at your history, to have him there is a big thing, especially if AEW is going to do what I predict they're going to do in 2025, which is add Hall of Fame to their list of things and start doing Hall of Fame inductees and ballots and all that. If they start doing that, I mean, you got to put Adam Copeland in the Hall of Fame at one point, right? And I know he's just had a short tenure in the AEW, but just as a world champion throughout his career, Adam Copeland deserves to be in any Hall of Fame, even if he's just walking and stepping foot into the company for the first time. So giving him a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship, a chance to be the World Heavyweight Champion, and then have Christian Cage end his World Championship run the same night by cashing in could be great drama. It could be a great story. Not saying that they should do that, because if they have this plan with Jon Moxley and the Death Riders, they need to see it all the way through so that we can at least have some sort of finality, because right now we're watching the most confusing movie of all times, and we don't even know the plot, and we're not really buying the characters, and we're hoping that the ending can tie everything together to give us a chance to make sense of it all. So we're going to see how they're going to play all of that out. But it's going to be interesting, and I like the fact that they have Adam Cole, because the crowd, they need somebody to definitively cheer for. Adam Copeland as a top face, they can do no wrong with that. I also liked the idea of Kenny Omega returning, and on the video you'll see a picture here that I snapped of the All In Texas in the background, the banner in the background, while Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada were having a face-off. That is not going to happen until July. Apparently, Kenny Omega is going to making his in-ring wrestling return at NJPW in their big event. He's going to be wrestling Gabe Kidd, so he's already getting back in the ring. So, I mean, I guess you can build to his AEW return to the ring, but 7 whole months to build to Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega. There's a lot that can happen in 7 months, especially in AEW. Injuries, plans change. I don't know if you want to spend 7 months building towards that match for the Continental Championship, unless at some point in that 7 months, Kazuchika Okada drops the Continental Championship, maybe to a returning Eddie Kingston, and then they both go after the World Heavyweight Championship. And so then in All In Texas, you've got Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega. Is that going to be for the first time? Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if this is the first time in the United States that match would happen, but I got to think that at least it may have happened once in the United States under the NJPW banner. I don't know if it did, but if it didn't, that's a huge main event to happen in All In Texas to grab the crowd and get people to buy into that stadium show, is by putting on a dream match like that people really only got to see through satellite or if they traveled to Japan. So, I mean, you can do no wrong by putting that matchup up there. But like I said, 7 months just to build to that as a Continental Championship match, you got a long way to go before you can get that. And I mean, a lot of story to tell. And I don't know. I mean, Tony Khan has not proven to me to be very patient with these dream matches. You know, I mean, with Ricochet and Will Ospreay, they've already had 2 encounters since Ricochet's shown up, and we almost saw it again. And, you know, and while we're on the topic of Ricochet, this storyline with Swerve Strickland is very interesting, because it's very similar to what you saw with Swerve and Hangman Adam Page. Hangman Adam Page was driven to snapping because of the mind games that Swerve played. It looks like he's going that similar route of mind games with Ricochet. And I've even seen people on the internet calling him Ricochet, which is hilarious. Like toilet paper sheet, or like piece of sheet. If you know, you know, right? So I like where they're going with this. I think this could be interesting, especially if we see Ricochet actually snap. I've always looked at the fact that Samantha Irvin wanted to be a manager, and that's one of the reasons why she left the WWE, as something that could be an interesting plot point for her coming into the AEW. Now, hear me out. Samantha Irvin can be the Tammy Lynn Sitch to Ricochet as Chris Candido. You guys are gonna shit on me for that. I already know, but hear me out. I'm not saying a one-to-one comparison on looks or athleticism or even charisma here. Chris Candido can cut on the microphone better than anybody, and he's way better charismatically than Ricochet at this point. No disrespect to Ricochet, but Chris Candido was a fucking legend. He was great on the microphone. He got me into him when he cut that promo in Barely Legal. I mean he can cut a promo better than anyone in the business. Rest in peace, Chris Candido. But what I'm saying is Ricochet can play into the fact that the fans are more interested in his wife, Samantha Irvin, and when she comes out and does her dance or sings or introduces Ricochet, Ricochet can then, hide her away or cover her, kind of like Mark Marrow and Sable, but without the misogyny and without the presumed abuse that was going on behind the scenes. I think that if you put Ricochet and Samantha Irvin together in AEW, it would be huge for Ricochet, and it could also boost his confidence. And then she can also be a distraction, and it can play into the fact that she really wants to be a valet. And I think it can be done tastefully, and I think it can be done really good. And I think the catalyst of that is watching him go into the mind game field with Swerve Strickland and then losing, and then coming out of it as a changed person, or maybe even winning and coming out of that even more confident than he ever should be. So I think those are two routes that they can go with this, and I'd like to see how this unravels going into 2025. And even if Hurt Syndicate still play a role in this, like maybe the Hurt Syndicate see the fact that Ricochet has brought his wife into the equation and then wants both of them as a package deal to come into the Hurt Syndicate. I think there's a lot that they can play with here with that, and it's a very intriguing storyline going into 2025. Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander, that match I've noticed on the internet has been getting a lot of mixed buzz. But to be honest with you, before I saw the buzz, I thought it was a really good match. I think they have great chemistry. Statlander and Moné, they work really, really well with one another. And they put on another good match. I mean, it wasn't a clean match. It wasn't a perfect match at all. But there is definitely some chemistry between those two. The only problem is there's really no story. And I think that's what's missing. And if they insert Willow Nightingale into this story and have Willow beat Moné, and then Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale go at it for the TBS championship, I think then you have some intrigue here. Because Statlander, they just dropped her program as a heel with Stokely Hathaway after her big victory over Willow Nightingale in the street fight, and they never really followed up with that. And it's a pretty interesting... I don't know if Statlander won. I thought she won, but I'm not sure on that. But just to say for a second, they didn't really give us finality. Hathaway just disappeared off the face of the earth, which he seemingly has been doing a lot. Sometimes he's aligned with people, then he just gets thrown away and then disappears. You know, he was coming in and getting involved with Private Party for a while. He was coming in and getting involved in a couple of other storylines, and then he just disappears off the face of this earth. You know, I mean, wasn't he with Jericho for a while too, or something like that? It's interesting. I don't know if if he's just looking for a home, but you know, essentially there's a video that I want to do where I talk about managers and just how they've been dropping the ball with managers for a long time in professional wrestling in general, not just in AEW. But the problem with AEW is the storylines and giving us a reason to care. The same that happened with Mariah May and Thunder Rosa. Mariah, it's gonna be May, has just been floundering ever since she won the AEW Women's World Championship, and then they thrust her into this program with Thunder Rosa, and there's really no reason why it was a Tijuana street fight. There was really no reason. I mean, yes, you can say there was some animosity, but there was really no reason. And they just kind of threw it together. And they didn't put Thunder Rosa on Dynamite. It seems like she's been ostracized from Dynamite. You really don't see her there that much, and they don't do a whole lot with following up on Mariah May and what she's doing outside of Collision. So, and maybe Rampage, when Rampage was still around. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that they need to do a little bit of a better job of honing in and giving us a reason to care about these characters, because Mariah May is on the precipice of being really great and really being a homegrown star within AEW. And they just need to find a reason to connect to the fans to who she actually is. And I noticed when she was coming out to the ring, she kind of did a little bit of the Britt Baker, entrance taunt there, like what DMD does. Maybe worth something to look at. I don't know if they've got something planned with her, but Britt Baker herself, she's disappeared off the face of the earth. Again, disappeared. No idea where she's at. Nobody's given us a follow-up. Don't know if she's injured. Don't know if she's suspended. Does anybody really care? See, that's another problem. But anyways, World's End was the conclusion, the final pay-per-view of 2024. AEW did not have a good 2024, in my opinion. Could have been a lot better. But it's how you work from that advantage, that disadvantage, rather. You're at a disadvantage. You're at a lull. You got to find a way to gain momentum. So you got to make the first show of 2025 hot to keep the fans interested, and it looks like they're stacking up their card for Dynamite, the first simulcast between TBS and HBO Max for January, and they're making it like a huge event. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what's going to go down with that. But as far as the way that things are playing out, FTR getting big bro Adam Copeland to go after the Death Riders. Copeland has a history with Darby, who filmed this comeback video package, and Copeland rallying the AEW locker room, the young AEW locker room, to fight, and can also bring up that bullies have tried to test you in this company for years and they get kicked out of here. Why are we letting this bully Jon Moxley stick around? Let's get him out of here. I think those are the promos that Adam Copeland can put on that are, kind of insinuating a lot of things, but then can also really rally the crew and get people tuned in. He has that engagement opportunity, and that's a big match that they had that we haven't really seen in AEW, and I think we've only seen... Have we ever seen Dean Ambrose against Adam Copeland? I mean, that's a great question, right? I don't remember if we ever saw Edge and Dean Ambrose, but if we did, it wasn't in a big scenario. If anything, it was maybe for like the U.S. Championship or something like that. But you guys let me know in the comments. Have you ever seen Edge and Dean Ambrose on a WWE PLE? Was it for like the U.S. Championship? Did it ever happen? You guys let me know. And what do you guys think of AEW this 2024? Do you think that they can regain momentum going into 2025? Even if you just want to say AEW shit or WWE's the best or WWE's shit and AEW's the best, it doesn't matter, you guys. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to have a conversation about it. Going into 2025, I hope that AEW regains their momentum and gets back into the good favor of the wrestling community, because by doing that, it makes everybody step their game up. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, if you haven't hit the thumbs up like button, what are you waiting for? Huh? What are you waiting for? Hit that thumbs up and subscribe. This is the Wrestling Old Head, and as always, stay tuned for more.